Hello everyone, good afternoon. So I started as a small child observing nature as a form of attention. So we had a small holding in Tipperary. And what I did was we had hens that I looked after. Does anybody have hens here? Yeah, oh, excellent, good. And we grew vegetables. I was one of 7 siblings. And we had a couple of horses, and I learnt water through, we lived on Lough Derg, through swimming, a little bit of sailing. I learnt the land through growing food, slightly incompetently riding, and then left. We all do. We go to the city, we train. But I came back in 2010 and bought a farm, which is called Brookfield Farm. And I started again. I started afresh to layer in what I had originally learned about biodiversity and ecology, how they work with agriculture. Because my new farm was, it's now about 85 acres, but working up from 60 odd. And what I'd like to talk to you today is about the kind of farming that is about nature's leftover. So the new story of farming, when I came back to start farming, I started farming organically. The idea is that farming is done at scale, and it's about productivity, and nature is got a little bit at the edge. If you're lucky, you might have a biodiversity strip on a headland, or you might leave a hedge in, but it's certainly not central. And for me, that seemed crazy, because the whole ecology, the way that food production happens, primary production relies entirely on the biodiversity, that net of life, that whole cycle of reproduction and death and composting and fertility and healthy soil. You know, in every teaspoon of soil, I'm sure you know this, that there are billions of entities, little organisms, little tiny little fungi and bacteria and viruses and little protozoa and like little tiny little worms and subworms, and between them they do this whole swapping over of nutrients, and then they provide those nutrients to plants so we can grow crops like this. And we leave out that network of life at our peril. So when I really dug into farming, I realized that I needed to make nature and biodiversity the center of what I was doing. And this is what happens if you don't. What you have is the story about productivity, the story about use the chemicals, the story about Earth will look after itself. That is what happens. That we're getting excess rain. I think we all know about the January, February this year has been certainly excess rain. Our soil is not standing up to it. I mean, how many people have seen the roads running brown with eroded soil, like this rivers running down the road full of our fertility that we absolutely need. Pollinators dropped by 75%, according to some measures across the whole of Europe, not just in Ireland. And we've got huge water quality issues. Our water quality is dropping slowly and steadily over the years. And we know that nearly 40% of our emissions are national emissions for the whole of Ireland. For every citizen in Ireland, nearly 40% of our emissions come from agriculture directly. So now that we've got this situation, that we're definitely feeling climate change in the incoherent weather patterns that we're having, what are we going to do? And I put it to you that what we need to do is look at farming as craftsmanship. So if we reframe it, instead of having it as a productive paradigm, why don't we think about how craftspeople think about farming, about care and observation and balance and making? Because we can make soil instead of just losing it. If we look at it properly, if we change our crop rotation, if we allow soil humus to build up, etc., etc. And we can repair it. We can repair our water quality problems. We can get things back in balance. Just in case anybody's wondering what the photograph is, that's actually a photograph of my farm. So it's now a mixed organic farm. And it's right on Lough Derg, which is the longest lake in these islands, under a lot of stress because the River Shannon runs through Lough Derg, and a third of Ireland is drained by the Shannon River system. So by the time all that water comes down and comes to Lough Derg, which is actually a very shallow lake, it's having huge impacts. And agriculture is one of the biggest, in fact, the single biggest impact. The next is untreated sewage and other kinds of pollutants. So my farm is absolutely crafted to bring in trees, and it's crafted to not use pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, because I have this respect for that ecology, for that biodiversity, that net of life. So let's talk about biodiversity as work. So we're going to split it up into soil and hedges, and then we're going to look next at water and trees and livelihoods. So on my farm, I have orchards. I keep sheep. I keep the black bee, the native Irish black bee, and we have several little woods. The biggest is about 15 acres, and it's about 80% oak, and organic crops, which at the moment we rotate around from field to field. So this year we're growing winter rye, an old variety of wheat called Galway land wheat, mixed in with pulses, with beans. So if anybody's looking for field beans, fava beans, they're extremely good for all of us, and I'm always looking for people to buy them. I also mix in agritourism, so we welcome people to the farm, because that is, for me, a really important part of farming. And as part of the biodiversity, the agro-biodiversity of farming, is that you welcome people. And we also do education around farming. I gave 8 years of my life teaching part-time sustainable agriculture, the Green Cert, et cetera, in agricultural colleges near me. And I'm very aware that agricultural education isn't fit for our current agricultural situations. So as part of the education, I have a program called Field Exchange, where I bring together artists, farmers who apply to participate, agroforestry experts, musicians, craftspeople, bring them all together and work together over a couple of years, and then present the work that has been co-created between the farmers, the musicians, the craftspeople. And we have the most extraordinary festival called Field Exchange Festival, which brings all this and presents it and welcoming people to come and see what we're doing. So this is I needed to put up a picture of our tractor, Massey Ferguson 135. It shows how much work you can get done on a farm with a little old undersized beast, and I'm not just talking about me. So biodiversity is work. It's not just the soil, and it's not just the trees. It's water. So our farm is intimately connected with the water. So we do a lot of things to make sure that we treat water as infrastructure and not as something to be got off the farm. So we have 2 fertility ponds, which act as fertility traps. So the farm drains from coming through other farms, come through our farm. The water slows in this pond, holding the excess nutrients, holding those excess nitrates, holding the scum of algae that comes down, and then the clean water goes on to Lough Derg. So we carefully design the farm so that the water is held and then released slowly. And that is the backbone of how water should be treated on farms. It's a precious resource. It's not there for us to make into something that's effectively poison. Trees are absolutely essential to how we farm. We've just got permission to put in 1.3 hectares of agroforestry. So that is integrating our sheep grazing with lines of trees through what was an open field. So we're putting in lines of oak and alder and the all native varieties. So we're going to mix in, we're allowed 15% of fruit and nut. So we're going to have some interesting hazels and walnuts. And as that progresses, those trees will become shelter, they'll become windbreaks, they'll become pollinator passageways, just like the hedges on our farm, which we encourage to grow thick and bushy and apex-shaped, A-shaped, so that allows habitats for all these birds, singing posts for robins, badgers and hedgehogs, and foxes, and the kestrel overhead can perch, and the very slow, ponderous buzzard needs a bit of a break. They're not terribly good flyers, so they need lots of perching places where they can dive down and get the rodents. And all strength to their wings, I say, for that. And livelihoods, because we can't achieve this idea of farming as craftsmanship, incorporating biodiversity, unless we incorporate the idea of livelihoods. And that is, it's something which needs to be really considered in policy and how we're going to change our way of farming, our methods of farming, because it's not individual farmers, it's a system that we've been encouraged into, which most farmers can't get out of. This system of high chemical use, high intensity, reduce your farm enterprises to one, and then whip and drive that to get the highest amount of milk or highest amount of meat. But it doesn't have to be like that. We can have the idea of uniformity, or else we can look at resilience. So I'm really interested in the idea of resilience being abundance. So an oak tree in its life will throw down hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acorns, knowing that very few of them are ever going to become an oak tree of the same size. And that doesn't matter to the oak tree. In our human brains, we look at that and we think waste, but it's not waste. The jays eat the acorns and plant some, squirrels eat them. The oak trees provide a home and a habitat for thousands of species. So there's no such thing as waste in nature. There's resilience, just in case, every year that you have a mast year for acorns or beech, you drop absolutely lots. So instead of having the uniformity, the fragility of that, we have the idea of diversity and resilience. And we do have credible pathways. Now, I know there's people in the audience who are saying, that's all very well. Organic farming is all very well. But if you don't want to spend your life, that's my dad on the left, look at him, isn't he sweet? And his little doggy. We did a little bit of hand harvesting of organic oats for this artist on the right. She makes costumes with it, so she needs very tall straw that's cut by hand. So I'm not saying we have to go back to medieval livelihood. I'm saying what we need to do is make that crop. So we made organic beer called Field Exchange out of that organic barley. And that is what it's about. It's about adding value. It's about processing on farm if you can. And it's really about valuing this extraordinary thing that we have, which is the soil under our feet, which is providing this abundance, and beer. So I have an invitation to you. What's the wording of my invitation again? Oh yeah. Have a really hard look at farms. Please, please pay attention to the infrastructure, to the biodiversity that's on farms. Look at what the landscapes are telling you. And do support farmers who are putting work and energy and recrafting agriculture and recrafting how to make the most of biodiversity instead of ignoring it and ignoring ecology and saying, oh no, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine, we just need a little bit more chemicals and we need to sell our products abroad. I have an invitation. Support farmers who are not doing that. Support farmers who are doing a lot more of craft. Thank you.